Hello everyone, welcome to Ecom Simplified again. Thank you for watching my video, like and subscribe on the way in. So this is a very common problem where your Shopify name is already taken. So this is an example of what a lot of people come across. It can be incredibly frustrating, and while it's not the most ideal case, today I'm going to go through how quickly this store name works and how it links to the store URL. So generally when you first start your store, you'll be asked to name your shop. So unfortunately this can create a large amount of confusion, however original your store name may be. So in the Shopify world, it doesn't necessarily end there if your name is taken. How it works with Shopify is that when you first choose to name your store, be it simple store or simple shop, you can see that it is taken. Unless you try a very weird name, then it can be available. So what this does is simply generates a My Shopify URL. So if I use the store name as an example, it would generate a store called Shopify store.myshopify.com. So it generally just uses the spaces as a dash and then the ends with myshopify.com. So if we try that here, you can see that it's not an available store at the moment because it is not an available store. It hasn't been made yet. So now that if we go back to look at the name again, you want to decide on how you want that to work. So example, if I name my store Ecom Simplified, you can see that the store is already taken as well, unfortunately not by me. But the key point now to remember is that whenever you create the store name, it just generates a default store URL. So it doesn't really mean that you can't use this particular name for your store. It just makes this URL as a default. And if you plan to make things professional, run a successful store, most likely you would buy a .com domain or a professional domain. So this URL isn't actually something that customers will see. So we'll touch on this in a moment. So coming back to the store name, it's all great until your store name that you are trying to use is taken. You've got the greatest idea, you want to launch it. In this case, there can be many possibilities. You may want to wish to check out what the store is currently looking like that's using that name. So if we try and take this store name, for example, and try and see what happens. So ecomsimplified.myshopify.com, you can see that that's not currently available. If you see that and the name has been used, then it means that the store was once used once upon a time, but it's not alive anymore, that the store owner has closed it or they don't want to carry on anymore. So that's kind of like a dead end, but if the store is still open, you can always consider reaching out to the store owner to buy it from them, but that's only if the store owner would like to let it go. If it is a dead page, then as I mentioned, it can't be reused. So where to now if your dream store is used? What would you do? So in essence, all you need to do is come up with the variation of the store name until it is not taken. So you could try either with maybe no spaces in between your words. You can add extra words such as Ecom Simplified Shop. Then you can see that that's available. You can try Ecom Simplified Store. That's also available. So if you try, or if you want to see what it looks like, you can add myshopify.com. That's what it will look like once you create the store of that name. So that's just an example. So I know it's not the ideal case, but just remember, once you make the store name, it just creates a URL, but you can always change the store name to what you like it to be, regardless of the URL. So that's a confusing part. So once you create the store, it will become a one with the My Shopify URL. So I'm going to use my store as an example. So if you go to Simplified Shop, or Simplified Shop is the one that I'm currently using. So if so my store name here is simplifyshop.myshopify.com. So if you go into your store and go to settings and go to general, you can actually see that my store name is a simplified shop. But if I wanted to, I can just call it simplified and save that, and then my name, store name, would become simplified. So it doesn't matter that my URL is looking like simplified shop, because once you kind of want to launch and have a professional URL, you'd like to buy a domain. So what a domain is that you'll go to online store and go to domains. Most stores or professional stores you visit will have a .com website, such as apple.com, microsoft.com. You don't really see stores that says apple.myshopify.com. You just see say simplifiedshop.com. So that's very commonly used. So just remember that when you generate the store name, it just generates a My Shopify URL. So you can buy a domain and then straight through Shopify, which makes things fairly straightforward. Or you can connect an existing domain through another provider that you bought, such as GoDaddy, which is a very popular domain provider as well. And then once you link your domain, once you've connected it, all you need to do is change primary domain. If you change your primary domain and select your professional domain, that is actually the domain that people will see, so not the My Shopify URL. So once you connect your primary domain and make it your primary domain, this store name or store URL is people won't see it. When people visit it for whatever reason, it will automatically be redirected to your professional primary domain, because you made it your primary domain. So that's in a nutshell something that you don't really need to worry about. So I hope that clears it up, that once you start your store with whichever name you like it to be, you can still go to settings and change the store name, or you can go to you can go to primary domain and then change whichever link you want it to be showing to your customers. So to reiterate, once your store name has been taken by someone, it's not the most ideal case, but you can still call your store whatever name you like after you've created the store. Although the My Shopify URL is something fixed and cannot be changed, as long as you aren't using a name that trades on other people's property or trademark, such as naming your store Microsoft.com or Apple.com, you can name your store whatever you like and just connect to your domain. And then your domain will be what people see, not your Shopify URL. So to generalize, your primary domain is what matters. And your My Shopify URL would just be used for kind of back of house, like say you might see this here, and if you ever need to contact Shopify support for any reason, then this is the store URL that you give to them to identify your store, for example. So actually, going back to the start, it's actually the primary domain that you want to figure out that's available or not, because that's going to be the thing that's going to show your customer or where your customers are going to visit. So making sure that your primary domain, such as simplifiedshop.com, is available is actually more important before you start your e-commerce store on Shopify. So for example, if we go to GoDaddy, you can always search for your domain and see if it's available beforehand, before you go back to Shopify to start your store. So if you search here, you can kind of see that the GoDaddy engine would come up with suggestions that it is available or not. So you can see that this store is actually available, but if your choice isn't, you can either choose other ones, or you can see other names that are potentially available for whatever price it is. So that's just an example of doing your research before you start your store. So I hope that clears that up. It can be very confusing when you start a store name and it says it's already in use, but then technically you can just create any other random store name and then rename it in your store settings, going back to settings, general, and store settings. And then go back to domains, online store domains, and then connect it to your domain. Alright, if you like this video, or if this helped you, please like and subscribe. Really supports my channel. Thank you again for watching. I'll see you in the next video.